Hey everyone, thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to be talking about Ethereum. We're mainly going to be looking at its ratio with respect to Bitcoin and following up on a lot of the previous analysis that we've done. So if you guys like the content, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn your bell icon on so that you can get notified when I make new videos. And also check out this Telegram channel here, which you can find a link to in the description below. So we crossed 3,000 members. We have our new admin of the channel, so go check out the channel if you want to join this community. So let's go ahead and jump in. So one of the things we've talked extensively about is the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio. Now, a lot of people who follow my channel aren't even, they either own Bitcoin or they own Ethereum. A lot of people don't own both. But there are a significant number of people who do own both of these coins and are looking for those momentum shifts in the market where you can where potentially swing trade these two coins to try to increase your position in either one or the other. Now remember, this is not financial advice. All I am doing is analyzing historical data and trends to try to inform my own decisions. So let's go ahead and jump in. So the first thing we've talked about is the idea of, and I'll just briefly cover this so we can get back in, is the idea of a buy region to kind of like a couple of different buy points, a peak, a second peak, our kind of like our last gas, so our local bottom, our run up to our final local peak, and then capitulation into the new buy region. So you can see that here we have our last gas, the buy region, peak, second peak, last gas, buy region, peak, second peak, last gas-ish. Obviously it's not as pronounced as over here. And then ultimately our capitulation into the buy region. Now, one of the interesting things about this is if we were to draw a line near the last gas phase of, basically when Ethereum, essentially right before Bitcoin got above the 20-week moving average, and I guess I should say held it as support in the early part of 2016. So in 2015, Bitcoin got above its 20-week moving average. In 2016, it held it as support. So this move, it's unclear exactly when it would come. If we were to see a move like that, I think if we did see something similar to it, I don't think it would be as pronounced. I don't think it would go up quite as much if it were to occur at all. But at first, when Bitcoin held the 20-week moving average, it was around this point, and at that point, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio went up, and it came back down before ultimately skyrocketing once Bitcoin was really holding the 20-week moving average as support. But the interesting thing is, this kind of like our last gas phase of this cycle. Note that there was not a double top, like a two peaks, because this is when Ethereum first launched onto the market, but it ultimately became our buy region during this sub-cycle of the Bitcoin market cycle. So you can imagine that from here to here could be one Bitcoin cycle. And we're not even sure if we've started the new cycle yet. We're just projecting. But we can note that our kind of like our last gas phase, our yellow dot phases, corresponded more or less, at least the peak of the before capitulation, corresponded to the buy region of the next sub-cycle. Furthermore, the last gas phase of this sub-cycle corresponds to the buy region that we were either still in or we've recently exited. So you can see that as we continue through these sub-cycles of Bitcoin, the last gas phase here corresponded to this buy region. The last gas phase here corresponded to this buy region. And then to finish that train of thought, our sell region for this sub-cycle corresponds to the last gas of this cycle before capitulation. So you can imagine if we were to continue that type of trend, then this kind of like our last gasp before capitulation might ultimately be one day the local buy region, and that could come in a situation. So I want you to imagine this scenario. So imagine Bitcoin holds the 20-week moving average as support for weeks, months. I don't know exactly how long it'll take, but at some point, if Ether does see this similar type of move, then maybe it would shoot up to this region and then ultimately have like a peak, a second peak, and then kind of come back down, and then this would be our new buy region. Now, I don't think this is going to happen immediately. I don't think Ethereum is going to have a breakout that's going to look this expansive in the next few days. Obviously, the ratio could start gaining traction as long as Bitcoin stays above the 20-week. But I don't think we're going to see a move like this in the immediate, like tomorrow or the next day or something. We want to see Bitcoin maintain its confidence above the 20-week to say that, okay, we are in the beginning phases of a bull run. So, and because if you follow this channel, we talk extensively about lengthening cycles. So potentially this moving up into this region, where whenever it does occur, if we were to say come up here and then see a first and second peak, our last gas, and then the buy region, then that would put the buy region, so this is 0.01, this is 0.02, so it would put the buy region between an Ethereum Bitcoin ratio of 0.03 to 0.04. So currently we're clearly below that. We bottomed out at around 0.02, but I'm just trying to get you to think into the future. Imagine these things diminishing in return, and then ultimately potentially coming into this region as a support region in the future, and then using this corresponding to this one here as say another launch pad once Bitcoin gets to its previous all-time high of $20,000. This could be the next time we launch off. And it could be launching from, say, the ratio of 0.3 to 0.4, or 0.03 to 0.04. I wanted to go ahead and add onto this chart the chart that a lot of people seem to like, and it's basically everything is the same, but I'm just color coding the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio by when Bitcoin is either above the 20-week or below the 20-week. So you can see back in the last cycle, when Bitcoin first got above the 20-week moving average, each point here corresponds to a single day. So when it first got above the 20-week moving average, it took it a while before it really took off. You can see that it happened, near, let's say, like Q3 of 2015, and then this move didn't come to the first quarter of 2016. We did see a move in between, but then it ultimately retraced. But regardless, you can see that when Bitcoin was above the 20-week, overall, the macro level picture, Ethereum performed quite nicely. Now, if you're a day trader and you're trying to time all this stuff, it can be quite a headache trying to figure out all of these moves. But it was, it is in my opinion that the macro level trader, the person who is swing trading these, momentum shifts in the market, those are the real winners. I think, scalping is one thing. But I think the real winners are the ones who are squeezing out profits throughout each momentum shift in the market. And one of those, I think, is designated by the 20-week moving average. And we've talked extensively about that. You can see when we're above the 20-week, Ethereum has historically performed quite well with respect to the US dollar. We know it's always gone up with respect to the US dollar if you go by weekly candles. And it has always worked for the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio, again, in terms of when it goes below the 20-week, as you can see in the blue line, and this blue line, this blue line, and this blue line. Ultimately, it has always been the case that by the time that Bitcoin got back above its 20-week with the weekly candle closing, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio would have decreased. The opposite is almost true, as we've talked about, except for this one time. So this was a time when Bitcoin got above the 20-week moving average, but Ethereum actually lost value with respect to Bitcoin, and this was during that rally in 2019 where Bitcoin went from around $4,100 to around $14,000 in the matter of a few months. And this could be an anomaly. It could be a part of the fact that we were still pretty much in our bear market mode, our accumulation phase. We hadn't really reached this part of the market cycle yet. But now we're questioning, okay, are we getting to that point? And we never know. We made the case back in December that we would expect a 2x return ROI on Ethereum, between 2 to 5x in the first quarter, based on historical patterns and based on all these factors setting up. And it turned out to work out for the best. We saw a 2x ROI in terms of its fiat value, not a 2x ROI in terms of its Bitcoin value, but a 2x in Ethereum, or in fiat value, which is notable. Now, we're starting to print these points here where Bitcoin is above its 20-week moving average, and Ethereum is kind of sitting, it's waiting, it's biding its time, it's looking to see, okay, is this a fake out? Are we really starting to get into the bull market? Is the fear in the market sufficient to really kick off a multi-year bull market? And I don't know the answer to that yet. I can at least say that it becomes more optimistic each time we try, especially because each time we try this, the subsequent time, people are more fearful and more bearish because they just think, okay, we're just going to go back down. This is a fool's rally. People buying now are going to regret it. So each time this happens, the case, I think, is you can make it stronger in a sense, in that it's going to ultimately fuel the next rally. Because you have to remember, retail normally gets things wrong. Sometimes retail gets it right, but for the most part, retail does not get these macro level shifts correctly. So consider that. I also just kind of wanted to show a couple of other just bands here, in a sense, so just essentially drawing it from bottom here, so buy region to buy region, and then extending it out to more or less say this final buy region, in a sense, before we ultimately saw our second peak and we ultimately capitulated, and then to say, okay, this was in a sense our uptrend channel. In the same sense, this is more or less our downtrend region. And then the speculation is, are we at the very beginning stages of this region here? And there's, I don't know, obviously, I don't claim to be clairvoyant. I don't have a crystal ball or anything. I just provide the data so that you guys can make your own decisions based on whatever risk tolerance that you're okay with. Because, it's possible that in the short term, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio goes down. Obviously, that's a possibility. We've seen it happen before. More often than not, it has gone up, but it could go down. But one of the nice things is, historically, it has always gone up with respect to fiat. So if you don't even really care about Bitcoin, if your main focus is Ethereum, look at this chart, because when Bitcoin is above the 20-week, you can see that the value of Ethereum with respect to fiat has gone up each time. So it went up here, it went up here, it went up here, and then we're starting a new, we're maybe in the beginning phases of a new shift in the market. And this is basically just measuring from when we broke it to when we broke it back the other way. Again, here to here, here to here, and then here to wherever we break it. Now, could it be a fake out? Yes, it could. I mean, we've had these before. For instance, this was a region where we saw a breakout of the 20-week, but ultimately it just dropped straight back below it. The opposite has also been true. You can see here was a day where Bitcoin was technically below the 20-week, but it was more or less just a fake out. It wasn't anything to be too concerned by. So we're still going to be going into this in terms of looking at it from a risk management standpoint. Remember, there is no free lunch. The people that see those returns one day, whatever it is, it's not like they invested at a completely risk-free time. people will come into the market and say, "Oh man, you're so lucky. How you saw such an amazing ROI. I wish I had done that." But the thing is those people wouldn't have done that because they just get spooked by what's going on in the market, and they're not willing to take that risk. And because they're not willing to take that risk, then they can never be rewarded in the same manner. If they wait until, say, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio or the price moves up substantially, then their ultimate ROI from wherever they buy in to the peak of the market cycle could be several times lower. So you can imagine buying in at, say, $200 versus buying in at $800 or something, or maybe they buy in at $600, but by that point they've already lost out. They've already lost out on a 3x ROI. So by buying in at that point, if they were to see, say, a 10x ROI from that point, it would pale into comparison to, say, to your 30x ROI. So that's ultimately the main point there. So, we made the video back in December talking about the value of Ethereum and looking at the ratio with respect to Bitcoin and saying it seems like it's considerably undervalued by looking at past historical data. And since then, despite the pullback in fiat, the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio has still been going up. So it is slowly gaining ground on Bitcoin. Now, ultimately, what are we looking out for? Obviously, is the 20-week moving average to hold as support. We've talked about that considerably. I'll talk about it again in a minute, but just to remind you, for those who like this content, they think it provides value, I do put out a weekly newsletter. I publish it on Sundays, my time, and it will provide you updated risk metrics, logarithmic regression type analysis. Sometimes I even look at traditional markets. You have access to a spreadsheet with risk values that are updated fairly frequently, and access to a private Telegram group. So if you want to join that, if you want to check that out, it's just the $50 a month. So it's called Dedicated Patron. It's just patreon.com/IntoTheCryptoverse. So if you want to check that out and just try, you could always just try a month. And if it's not your cup of tea, then you don't have to renew. But you could try it out and see if it provides you some insight and value that you might not find other places, because we do try to look more at the markets in terms of, say, data science, rather than, say, a lot of the traditional indicators that people use, which I think a lot of times are actually not very predictive at all, and they just point to the few times that they did work out to say, okay, well, it worked out, say 60% of the time, therefore I'm always going to time my day trades by this. But you can lose a lot of money doing that type of stuff. And ultimately, if you are day trading, how much time do you spend just staring at the screen, stressing over so many things? I mean, I think what's a lot more healthy is, we only have one life, is to try to time these macro level moves and then go about your life and just not stress about it. So I try to break things down in a way that will help you, say, dynamically dollar cost average yourself into the market based on your own risk tolerance. So it can be catered to whatever your own personal risk tolerance is and what your goals are. So again, if you want to check that out, you can just go to patreon.com/IntoTheCryptoverse and just subscribe to this tier. This other tier is obviously a lot more expensive, but the reason is because for the people that are in this tier, I'm normally talking with them, over the phone several times a month, and answering their questions. So that's why it's a lot more expensive. If you're wondering, it's because it's a lot of one-on-one communication. But I think this is the right tier, the correct tier for most people. So we have around 120 people, because we have some people paying with crypto. If you want to pay with crypto, I'll link that down in the description below as well. But go ahead and check out that community if you're interested. So the final thing that I want to talk about is just, again, looking at Bitcoin, because this is what it all comes down to. If Ethereum is going up, it's most likely because Bitcoin is maintaining its value above this 20-week moving average, which I think is a very critical point. If you see, if you are interested in putting in, say, stop losses and that kind of stuff, let's say you transition to Ethereum, because we are going to start closing the weekly candle tomorrow, and Bitcoin, and notwithstanding a crash back down to say $7,800, Bitcoin will be closing above the 20-week moving average. So if you wanted to say try to get ahead of the Ethereum move, if and when it comes, even if it comes, maybe it comes tomorrow, maybe it comes 3 months from now. But whenever it comes, rest assured that there's a 99% chance that when it comes, Bitcoin will be above the 20-week moving average. I get a lot of questions from people that say, well, if the potential ROI from Ethereum is so much greater than Bitcoin, why would you ever invest in Bitcoin? Like, what's the point? Well, the point is squeezing out those trades at momentum shifts in the market, and we've talked about that before. So if we were just to say let's go to CoinGecko and just look at some of the price moves. I mean, this is a really good example. I mean, in the last 7 days, Bitcoin is up 21% compared to Ethereum's 12%. So timing these shifts in the market when Bitcoin is below the 20-week to when it's above it can actually be fairly substantial. So this is the primary point that I wanted to illustrate. So again, watch out for the 20-week. Obviously, people ask me, Ben, what do you consider to be, say, a bearish scenario? Remember, we do look at lengthening cycles quite a lot on this channel, with projecting that we're not going to see a new paradigm shift peak of, say, like a 6-figure Bitcoin and a 5-figure Ethereum until 2023 or so, plus or minus some 6 to 8 month tolerance on that. So if that's the case, then again, whatever happens in the short term is irrelevant, whether we come back down and then go back up, or if we just kind of continue our slow move up. Ultimately we're still on track. We're still doing exactly what Bitcoin has done for the long haul, and that is increasing. The highest level of volatility was early on, and then it has decreased as we've continued on our path. So I would encourage you to just follow the price of Bitcoin, to try to again gauge what you should be doing in terms of your Ethereum position. So I do anticipate at some point to be covering Ethereum. Maybe once Ethereum starts really picking up, maybe I'll do like a live stream or something again. I did a couple of those, and people seem to like them. But again, it may or may not happen this quarter. It could happen next quarter. But I would urge you to just be patient and to follow the 20-week moving average of Bitcoin. So I think that'll wrap it up for this video. Remember to check out the Telegram channel in the description below if you want to, talk with me and talk with a lot of other people. Again, we have, over 3,000 people in the group. So there's a lot of great minds in there, a lot of people from all walks of life. So check that out. Definitely subscribe to the channel. And again, if you want to check out the premium content and want access to that stuff, then check out Patreon, or you can pay with crypto in the description below. And if you do pay with crypto, you actually do get a discount, because I basically make you either pay for 6 months or 12 months, and just because it's something I don't want to check in with you every single month on whether you want to renew, I do give you a discount for basically paying up front for a longer period of time. So that'll wrap it up for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.